Hi, everybody. We are a little behind schedule today. We had some technical issues that we're just getting figured out. I am Paul Gazone, one of the associate principals at Oceanside High School. I'm here with Dr. Glickman Rogers. She is our principal at Oceanside Middle School. And our guest for today is Glenn Myers. Glenn is a aerospace mechanical engineer. And he works on things such as airplanes, aircrafts, and even space shuttles, from what I've heard. So, Glenn, thank you so much for being here. Joe Capone, again, you're here every day. Thanks so much. We appreciate it. We know we started a little bit late, but we're ready to go. So, hi, Vincent. How are you? Glenn, why don't you just start off by telling us a little bit yourself, your background, and what you do?
Yes, hi everybody. So I'm excited to be here and tell you a little bit about my career. So, it all goes back to the movie 2001. My dad took me to see that in Forest Hills, and I was probably all of 3 or 4, 5 years old, and it made a big impression on me. And then the next thing you know that happened in my life was in 1969 we landed on the moon, and I remember watching in my living room, seeing in black and white TV the first man land on the moon. And then later in life, I ended up working on the space program. I worked on the shuttle program. And I met many astronauts, including Jim Lovell and Buzz. So it's been a great career, great experience. I've been in aerospace now for 35 years. I started off out of school. I went to the University of Buffalo. And I'm also on the advisory board for the University of Buffalo. Graduated and I started my career at a company called Arkwin Industries on Long Island in Westbury, and they're still open and exist. And I worked on designing flight controls. Uh, was a project engineer, ran the FAA Repair Center, and now I work for a company called AR Corporation, which is the largest maintenance, repair, overhaul uh, company in North America. And I've been there now 20 years. So, I'm happy to answer any questions about your path and colleges and, the different types of engineers. I find a lot of people don't understand the different types of engineers. I could explain that. And also what you need, what kind of background, what you need to be an engineer. So,
Those all
how's the,
sound
So,
good.
how's the audio going? Is it okay?
yeah, it's fine when you're talking. So we just gotta make sure you're muted when we're Alice or myself are talking. So, Glenn, that was such a inspiring story, actually, talking in the manner that you had a moment in time that really inspired you to kind of pursue this career and this profession. Can you just talk about that first? Because I just find that so interesting in the sense that there was this pivotal time in your life where you experienced something, and it sounded like something just clicked for you. And I'm just wanting to hear more about what that felt like, and why you think you remember that moment so strongly.
Yeah, it's interesting. It just resonated in me. I don't think I realized it when I was young, but then as I grew older, I always gravitated towards science and math and, how things work. I'm a very mechanical guy, and my degree is actually mechanical engineering. I was a kid that always took things apart, but when I put it back together, there were no missing, I used all the parts. So, but so this definitely it's intuitive. I could see, as engineers say, when you see a flat two-dimensional print, I see it in 3D. So if you have that capability of seeing threes, seeing something flat, a drawing or something, and you could visualize it. That's a skill. Um, the most important thing, if you're in high school and junior high, is math and science. So if you're really, really good at math, and science, a great career path is becoming an engineer. Math is the language of engineers. So math is has to be intuitive. It's a tool. It's your tool to design. If you're not comfortable with math, it may not be the best way to go. But that's my suggestion. If you're really strong at math, embrace it. Take calculus in high school. Go the harder path. Challenge yourself. So engineering is about a challenge. What engineers do is they problem solve. Engineers are just great problem solvers. That's all they are. And the way It's a strange degree because most people just have BSMEs. They usually don't go on for a master's in engineering. And the reason being is engineering school is only 4 years undergraduate, and they're looking for very mature students. It really should be a master's level, but it's not. And I've asked a lot of professors the reason for that, and a lot of engineering schools the reason for that is because they're looking for somebody who's really going to carry the ball and study hard and get through it at the undergraduate level. It's kind of strange, but that's how it is. And they do it on purpose. Um, so my suggestion is if you're great at science and math, go for it.
Glenn, were there other activities that you were involved in middle school and high school that allowed you to explore this interest that you've had, at a very young age? Were you able to what's the word I'm looking for? Were you able to pursue that interest like outside of the classroom through extracurricular activities? Were there certain activities that you were involved in during your middle and high school career?
Yeah, it's funny. It's indirectly, like for instance, I was always in a band and played music, and they say that people that are good at math are also good at music for some reason. So there's things like that, and I always worked at myself. I always worked on my cars and stuff like that. But I used to do a lot of reading, so I was always interested in history. So in my mind, I always, looked at it from a different avenue of what people invented and what they did based on the situation of history. A good example of that I think today, probably what's happening now at GM and Ford and the motor companies is that, they have the task of making respirators right now, and they normally make cars. So the people behind the scenes right now are the engineers who are saying, okay, instead of a car, what parts can I use from the car to make these respirators, because if you think about it, a lot of the material they might have in stock will help. So the nuts and bolts and washers that put cars together are going to end up putting together these respirators. And it's the know-how of the engineers that are going to figure out how to make them. So that's what engineers do. It goes back to problem solving.
How that's it's great how you related that to going on in our world today. Can you just maybe speak to what do you think is like cool, like the most interesting part of your job or coolest part of your job? We always like to hear what people love about what they do.
Yeah, so the great thing about being an engineer, I mean, my career path is kind of interesting because I was on the design side of it, and then I went over to management. So right now I'm really in management. But the interesting thing about being an engineer, I think, is that your day is never the same. If you end up working on projects and programs, every day is different, and that makes it really exciting. More recently, I specialize on the F-16 and the CH-47, which are military platforms, and I'm sort of known in that, and I help set up the depots in many various countries around the world. So I end up traveling the world, at the capacity I'm at now. But in the past, there's so many different, highlights, like working on the shuttle program, meeting the astronauts. But you don't even think about it when you're doing it. You're just doing the task at hand, and meeting a lot of people, team building. One thing to keep in mind when it comes to engineering is that in engineering is very technical. They teach you a lot of the formulas and how to design and math and equations. But, they don't teach you in engineering school the business side of it. So, by seat of my pants, one of the things I've always done is I've always gone back to school. And during my career, I've always chosen 1 or 2 classes to take out of college. And done that. So I probably have a master's 3 times over, but I never have the formal master's degree. But I think, with that said, I think one thing to think about if you're headed to college for engineering is to consider getting an MBA, because if you think about it, if you work a project, you got to understand cost and finance, and they don't teach you that in engineering school. So schools such as Binghamton University have a 5-year program that you could get your BS ME or BS degree in engineering, and you could also get your MBA at the same time. So I think that's something to think about career-wise, is if you could get your engineering and your master's at the same time within 5 years, you're going to save a lot of money, and you're going to, you'll have any job you want in terms of engineering if you go that path. So that's something to consider.
So you've been in this profession for a long time. I believe that it probably when you began, the profession was predominantly male. Have you seen that change at all?
Oh yes, quite a bit. So that's something I'm really excited about. Is that when I went to engineering school, if there were just a handful of girls I could count on my hands, and I think that's fantastic that that world is now open up to everybody, and it's really important that the girls embrace engineering because there's no reason not to. Don't think of it as something that just boys and guys do. It's it's a wonderful opportunity, and I think it just comes down to your skills. If you're good at, like I said, science and math, go for it. It isn't a male thing at all. And what's great is I think all the colleges are embracing that. The University of Buffalo, the previous dean was a female, which was fantastic. So I think a lot of doors are opening. Don't think they're shut because in the past, it tends to be like that. So I'm excited about that and encourage that. So it's more about skill set. If you're good at it and you really want to do it, go for it. And if you don't understand what the engineers do, real quick, the basic engineers are chemical engineers, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, civil engineers, right? Environmental engineers, industrial engineers. There's so many things you could do as an engineer. Think about what intrigues you, what subject matter you really like. If you like chemistry, a chemical engineer is a great career. If you like to work with people, become an industrial engineer because industrial engineers just work the process in a factory. So it depends what type, what do you like? Do you want to design a car? Do you want to design a plane? Then become an ME like myself. If you like buildings, civil engineering, right? So I think it's just about, if you're good at math and science, and the next thing to figure out is what type of engineer do you want to be? There's so many. Now the exciting thing is data mining is a big buzz right now, and computer science. So a lot of engineering schools have the computer science schools part of it. So there's a lot of discussion about, with data mining and computer science becoming very strong, where does that go? Is it an engineering degree? Is it a computer science degree? So that's another very interesting avenues. Colleges such as Michigan now have those kind of degrees within their engineering department, which is new. So that's an exciting avenue to look at.
What sorry if you guys could mute. So at the middle school, our students spend anywhere from a quarter to a half a year, 7th and 8th grade, working on through a STEM curriculum. And this could be an area of interest or a student, discovers during the middle school years, this is something I really like, this is something I'm good at, this is something I want to do more of. Taking 2 projects, for example, we build probably when you went to school, they were called the CO2 cards. We don't power them anymore with the CO2 cartridges. And then we also do some building. Like we still do the bridge, some quarters. What type of careers might a student want to explore if they've taken an interest in the projects that we do within our STEM classes? We also do, I should say, we do a project where students have to create a product and then what kind of engineering?
Yeah, I was having a hard time. I had a hard time hearing you. I don't know why you're breaking up a little bit.
All right, I'll say it one more time briefly. What type of engineer, careers within engineering might our students want to explore if they've taken an interest to the projects that they've done within the middle or the high school tech curriculum, whether it's building their model transistors or a bridge, that has to withstand a certain amount of pressure, if they're designing a product. just wondering what you mentioned. There's all these different types of engineering. What might a student wants to pursue? Like what are those aligned with? I guess is what I'm asking.
The only part I didn't hear was the kind of projects they're working on. Maybe
Paul, do you want to say?
Yeah, so Allison referenced the CO2 cars, even though we're not using CO2 cartridges anymore. Our engineering department at the high school, they're just working on all different types of projects. I mean, I can't even go into off the top of my head. It's like one of those situations where they do so much that you can't actually recall them in a moment's notice. But we have a very extensive project leadway program. We have an intro engineering design class at the 9th grade level. We have a architecture class. And then we have a civil engineering, principles of engineering course. So it's basically at the high school level. It's a 3-step process called Project Lead the Way through the Rochester Institute of Technology, and that's built upon the technology, engineering type classes they take or projects they do at the middle level. So if they're doing these projects and they're really excited about what they're doing, maybe not just engineering, but what other career fields are open for them to explore if they have an interest in doing what they're doing?
Yeah, so that's fantastic. They're doing these projects and opening their minds and getting hands-on experience. Because I think that's something, by the way, that you want to do when you go to engineering school. Because what I find is that engineering school is so overwhelming in terms of the class and studying. But what's really important is like just like you're doing these projects in high school and in middle school, you do that when you get to engineering college. And what you want to do is try to connect with the professors and see what research they're doing and ask them how you could be involved, because I think it's really important to get hands-on experience when you're at engineering school. It's not just formulas, right? So that's important to keep in mind. Now, I think going back to what I was saying before, when you do these projects in your school, at middle school and high school, what do you enjoy doing? I think what you got to look at is which ones do you really enjoy, and then follow the path of what you enjoy. So if it's making a bridge out of toothpicks or something, and that you enjoy that, then maybe you want to be a civil engineer and work on structures and buildings. And if it's along the lines of science and chemistry, that maybe you want to be a chemical engineer, right? But the other thing that's important is when you apply to college, when you look at the colleges, look at what they specialize in, right? So for instance, if you go to University of Michigan, they're very connected to the car industry because of location, right? If you look at the University of Delaware Engineering Department, they're basically funded by DuPont. So, they're very strong chemical engineering department. So part of it is understanding what you enjoy, and then when you apply to college, understanding which schools and what they're strong in when it comes to engineering. That's important too, because then when you get to the school, you'll be on the right path of what they do. Sorry about the audio issue.
I think it's good for the students to hear that, so you don't really have to know specifically which branch of engineering. That many universities will offer you the opportunity to take entry-level classes where you could explore the different. I'm out.
So Paul, maybe you could, I can't hear her, maybe you could tell me what the questions are.
I wish I could, Alison. I couldn't get that. There was too much feedback and you were kind of breaking up. Do you want to try again, Allison? Maybe talk slower.
I was saying that I think it's good for students to know that they could go to college and take entry-level engineering classes to get an idea of what type of engineering you might want to be. So you don't need to make that decision necessarily before school, although there are schools that have specific pathways if you do know before. But if you don't, that's okay too.
Did you get that, Glenn?
No, maybe you could tell me.
Sure. So I think what I heard from Allison was that what's great is that when there are certain schools and colleges that have entry level engineering classes where they can explore different types of engineering, so they don't need to necessarily make those decisions. The freshman year of college, right? And, there are colleges and institutions that have specific pathways right out of the gate. But what's great is that there are also institutions that offer engineering type courses that are general engineering, and then students can kind of explore those avenues and do different projects and really solidify the path that they see is going to work best for them. So, Glenn, talk to me about, you shared with us what was most interesting, but what do you find very difficult about your job? What do you think is the hardest part of your job? You're muted, Glenn.
Sorry about that. One question: does your school district offer engineering classes within high school?
My question was, what do you find most difficult about your job?
Oh yeah, no, I got your question. I was just asking, go back to what you were talking about previously. Does your school district offer engineering classes in high school?
Our Project Lead the Way program starts at the high school level. Allison, I'm not sure what you guys have at the middle level.
Just technology. It's an intro to technology, and 1 year, and then the other year is a STEM focus.
Got it. Yeah, so that's a really good point. Just going back, and I'll answer the other question about the challenges, is if you have the opportunity to take some classes in high school, which are engineering, it's really good, because then you could understand what you want, what kind of engineer, and if you like engineering. My son, I live in Merrick, so he went to Calhoun High School, and my son, by the time he went to college, had 32 engineering credits.
Wow.
Before he even entered college. Wow. And they basically told him when he entered, he went to the University of Binghamton, that he was never a freshman. He went right to being a sophomore. And that was because of all the STEM classes he took and so forth. So it was a great way for him to jumpstart his engineering career. So I really, hope if you could take advantage of that as a student and take some engineering in high school, go for it, and you get some AP credit, and you'll jumpstart your engineering path, and it'll make it easier for you. So that's a really, really great way to go. And also, if you think about the MBA concept, it will help you for that. Mm-hmm. Challenges. So challenges are interesting. I think it depends on your career path, but there's a lot of regulations, I think, today that probably didn't exist when I first started. When I first started in aerospace, it was more about pure design. It was more about, but I was working in a different time. I was working with engineers at the time on Long Island who worked at Grumman and Fairchild Republic. And it was more about hands-on, go see the aircraft, and they'd say, we need this and it has to do that. And we could design things within 6 months and in a model shop, and then test it out and try it out. And these were engineers that started off with the propeller planes in World War II and saw, it developed to a jet plane. And the knowledge base was incredible, and they taught me really a lot. So I was fortunate that I had that opportunity. But I see today one of the challenges today is, it seems like when we design aircraft, at least, that many companies are involved. And where it used to be one company, Grumman, or one company, Fairchild, that you worked with, now today on an aircraft, you could have one company work on the hydraulic system, another company work on the pneumatic system, another company work on the engines, another company work on the electrical. And it gets very complex, and to the point where sometimes you're not even sure who's in charge, and that becomes a challenge. In terms of responsibility. So it's more complex, and it probably doesn't have to be that way, but it's just sort of the way it is now, where in the past it seemed like things were a little bit more simpler, and it got done a little bit quicker. So
Try one more time. Can you hear me?
Talk slow.
I was just going to point out that, you know, students mature at different rates. So for some students, you might like math and like science, but it might not come as easy to you as you would like it to come. It doesn't mean you should give up on the idea of becoming an engineer, because as you mature and your brain matures, you might hone your math and science skills and might be able to, and very well might be able to pursue engineering. So if you like that problem solving idea, and working with your hands, just because your math and science isn't quite there yet, it very well might be, as you get older. So you should still, keep this door open and consider engineering as a path as you move through the high school.
Right, and I agree with that. I wasn't in any way trying to discourage anybody, but I was just trying to point out that if those are your strengths, it's just a natural career path. And like you said, anybody, if you try hard, anybody could become an expert overnight at, learning a skill set
Right.
such as math.
Right.
Yeah.
Good point. Thanks.
But that's real important.
Thanks.
Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with Allison. I mean, I've been at the high school level for like 10 plus years. I'm a certified math teacher, and I've seen students struggle as freshmen in algebra, and I've seen certain things click for them when they get to their 10th grade year and they're in geometry and then algebra 2 and so on. So, if you are a student that, has a passion for some of the things that we've been talking about, if you're struggling early on, it's okay. Sometimes it just takes you a little bit longer to develop. Glenn, but, we've been talking a lot about I would say hard skills such as physics and math and stuff like that. But what about soft skills, right? So what other skills is necessary for someone who is interested in going into this field to have? Collaboration, time management, stuff like that. What do you think is important for a candidate to have who might be applying for an engineering position?
Yeah, so later in life, what happens is it depends on the position you end up at. So, like myself, I was what they call a project engineer for many years, and I just enjoy working and being with people, and that was an important skill set to have because there's a lot of teamwork, especially in aerospace. There's a lot of teamwork, and there's other engineers that go on the path of getting a master's and a PhD in engineering, and they're doing research in a lab. So it really depends what you want to do and where you end up. So it's an interesting question, but there's definitely it always boils down to the problem solving issue with engineering, and with that also keep in mind that a lot of my friends have been very successful having an engineering degree as their undergraduate degree and then getting degrees in totally different fields. So some of the most successful people I know actually who ended up getting law degrees are actually patent attorneys, because of the strength of having their engineering and law degree. And it's a fabulous combination. So that's a really great career path, a very successful career path, by the way. I know other engineers who worked in finance and in Wall Street, and because of their mindset of problem solving and programming, they became probably some of the most successful people I know of down in that business. So it's just a good skill set to have, even if you end up in different careers in the end. It doesn't hurt because, the idea of problem solving, no matter what you end up doing, it's going to help you. So it really is a good undergraduate degree if you're not really even sure what you want to do and you say, I am good at that, and I'm really intrigued by, I always wanted to do that, and it happens to be an engineering degree, so it doesn't hurt. It really doesn't hurt.
Okay, so we've been on for just about a half hour now. We're gonna wrap up real quick. Glenn, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to share any final or concluding remarks with our viewers.
Yeah, so I hope everybody learned a little something. I'm sorry about the audio situation. But I just wanted to make the point that engineering is a great career path, and there's so many different types. And one of the things maybe to think about is the different type of engineers there out there, and then following up to see which schools are out there that specialize in the different types of engineering. Real quick, the high-end schools, obviously like the MITs and the Stanfords and the Berkeleys, but the state schools in New York have really, really strong engineering programs. So at the university level, if you really want to have vast choice of different types of engineers, the University of Buffalo and Stony Brook have excellent engineering programs. If you want a little bit of a smaller school in terms of size of class, the Watson School of Binghamton has an excellent engineering program. And then if you look at almost any state, any of the big state schools typically have very good engineering programs. Penn State, Virginia Tech, Rensselaer, Clarkson, Maryland, Delaware, Rice, Northeast, all these schools are great schools. Georgia Tech, Michigan, Carnegie Mellon. These are just rattling off some of the bigger names. But most schools have good engineering programs. You want to look see if they're accredited, ABET accreditation. That's important, and what their ranking is. I hope that helps a little bit.
So Glenn, thank you so much for giving us your time today. It really means a lot. We really, it's difficult times, and we appreciate when people are willing to give their time to our community. So we're just wrapping up for the week. On Monday, we have Michael White coming on. He is a member of the New York City Carpenters Union. On Wednesday, we have Susan Spindle, who works in fashion merchandising. Thank you, everyone, for being part of today, and please enjoy the rest of the day and enjoy your weekend. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank